Good evening all, and welcome. I hope you're ready for the sweet embrace of the night, because it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control.
I was on a cross-country road trip with a colleague. We were driving through West Texas on a major highway. In the area where we were, even the major highway was pretty desolate. There had been a truck stop or gas station about every 100 miles, and every one of them was solitary, with no other buildings in sight. There weren't really towns, the exits, just places to get to more gas stations to the next gas station. It was pretty late at night, and she had been driving for 4 hours. I usually can drive for about 8 before I'm tired, but she could only manage 4 or 5 before it was my turn. We were getting low on gas, about 1/4 of a tank, and you learn from road travel to fill up when you get a chance. So she was looking for a gas station as we drove along. It's really corny, but we were talking about fate and destiny and some other weird shit at the time. That kind of conversation gets me keyed up and worried, so I was trying to change the subject. She took an exit whilst we were talking, and I got out my coffee mug so that I could fill it up during my turn for driving. We pulled up into a typical nowhere gas station, just the station and the trailer out back. I assume, thinking back, it was probably where the people who owned it lived. There was another car parked out in front of the doors off to one side. We got out, still talking, and we walked up to the double doors, each of us grabbing a door handle. The door was locked. I turned and looked around to see if there was a sign. Some places will put a "back in 5 minutes." And then I noticed several things in succession. The coffee maker, inside, was halfway done brewing a fresh pot of coffee. The monitors that showed the store were visible from outside, but all of them were showing static, and there was a splash of bright red on the door in the back of the place, which was closed. I suddenly realized I was looking at a huge streak of blood, with handprints in it. Every hair on my neck stood up. My friend began shaking the door, yelling, "We need to get gas!" But I had already turned and walked away from the doors. "We have to leave, now." I grabbed her arm and started propelling her back into the car. Now I noticed the other car in the lot. It had no plates. It was dingy and had dents. There was an empty gun rack in the window. I ran into the car, dragging her in with me. She seemed to take forever to open her hot door and get in. The whole time she was just saying that we needed the gas, whilst I tried to explain to her that there was blood in there. Blood! After what seemed like a year, she pulled the car out when we were backing up. I saw through the windows that the back door of the gas station was open. We had pulled away before anyone thankfully came out. I freaked out until we were about 20 miles away down the highway. I tried to call the police, but we had no signal, and I didn't get phone signal until we had driven about 40 miles and got to another truck stop. Again, not a town, just a building on its own out in the middle of the nothingness. I called the cops, they thanked me, and I never heard any more about it. But to this day, I feel like if I hadn't have freaked out, we probably would have met the robbers or whoever was in the back room of the place. I also wish I'd have been able to find out what the hell happened there. It was a Chevron station, somewhere in the western part of Texas. At least within about 100 miles or so of the signs for those places, on Route 10. A few months ago, I was into an undergrad in Austin, Texas, and had just become comfortable enough with myself to come out of the closet. At the time, there were no dating apps available to find dates, so I used Craigslist. Big mistake. I started chatting with a guy off Craigslist, Craig, and we hit it off. and decided to set a time and place for a date to meet in person. The ad said he was 27, and I was 18 at the time. At first, he was very insistent on meeting at his place, which I later found out was just a trailer, and it kind of made me suspicious. But in his pictures he was very good looking and had a lovely smile, so I decided to let it go. Eventually, we agreed to get a coffee before going to his place. So the day arrived, and I went to get a coffee and was pretty excited. I had showed my roommate pictures of Craig and talked about how I was really looking forward to meeting him. I showed up at the coffee shop, and he was already there. He actually did look like his picture, so that was a good start. We got a coffee and ended up chatting for several hours before he asked me whether I wanted to go back to his place. Luckily, my roommate called to check up on me, and it also happened that he was stranded because his car was broken down. So I told Craig that I would take my friend back home before heading over to his place. Well, by the time I picked up my friend, Craig was no longer answering his phone nor texts. When he finally answered, he accused me of making up some excuse so I wouldn't have to go back to his place with him, and he was basically very angry and annoyed despite our great conversation earlier. I was a bit bummed, but basically didn't think of him again until years later, when my old roommate sent me a news article about Craig. Apparently, he had been running sex trafficking rings using underage boys that he would lure through his good looks / promises. I can only imagine what would have happened to me if I'd have gone back to his trailer with him that day. That article gave me chills, and I feel so lucky to be alive right now and to still have my freedom. I attended the same university for my bachelor's and my PhD. There was a lovely woman by the name of Jennifer, who was my reading and content area instructor. All the guys swooned over her because she was gorgeous, and I loved her because she read us together out loud. She was an awesome instructor and was doing her PhD in literacy. Fast forward a few years and Jen has moved to South Carolina to teach literacy. I'm now in my PhD program and in the same grad student's office that she used to work in, with other literacy people that were her colleagues. And then we get the news that she was murdered by her boyfriend. Everyone is totally devastated, and it was a huge blow to the department as she was genuinely loved by everyone who knew her. So a few days after her funeral, her body was brought home. I'm in the office suite, very early in the morning when no one else is about. The grad students had a fishbowl office, within a larger office suite that was locked and had light motion sensors. I'm walking in and pass a locked door and window, and I see a woman with short dark hair walk the other way inside, which was weird because the lights didn't flicker when she moved. So I walked around the corner to the door with a key code and let myself in. I walk inside and head to where I saw her. The lights flicker on when they sense me. No one is there. It's just me in eerie suites of empty office. I swear to God that it was her, saying goodbye to a place she spent so many years, where she had so many good friends. It spooked the hell out of me, and it made me quite sad too.
What I am about to tell you is 100% true, as far as I know. Some of the details may be unintentionally exaggerated or embellished, as it's been many years since some of these events occurred. That said, the following events still creep me out to this day. In November 1998, my family moved into a brand new house on a newly developed neighbourhood in Australia. It was gorgeous, and the neighbours were all so friendly. There was even a park down the road.
Opposite our house was an old 1839 Georgian mansion. The entire neighbourhood had been developed on the old farmland that this manor had once owned and resided over. From day one, that place intimidated me. I was 4 years old at the time, and the events of the first story occurred sometime before my brother was born. So at the most, I must have been about 6. For a good length of time during those few years, I met them, the shadow people. I was not asleep when I met them, and it was not at night either. In fact, at the time of encountering them, I wasn't even scared. Well, not for the whole encounter anyway. My father would have been at work, and my mother outside hanging the washing, or attending to some other chore. I was completely alone in the house, playing games. Even as a child, I would realize the moment when they would arrive. Suddenly, there would be a shift in the atmosphere. The feel of the room would change, and I would know that I was no longer alone. Then, I would catch a glimpse of a shadow. Each time the shadow would appear very dark, but not solid. It would have a clear outline that would cast against the wall. Never would the shadow be attached to anything, almost as if it were on its own, an independent entity. Every time I saw it, it would start running away, as if I'd caught it. I used to think of it as a game, and I'd start chasing it around a circle. The way our house was set up, you could walk from the living room to the hallway, to the kitchen, to the office, and then the living room again, without lifting your hand off the inner wall. As I chased the shadow, it would get faster and faster until it dashed into another room before I could reach it. As soon as I lost eye contact, it was gone. As soon as it disappeared, the atmosphere in the house would return to its previous feeling of emptiness. Now, however, it felt gaping and heavy, as if being so suddenly alone was too strong a feeling, too sinister. My child self would run outside to my mother and tell her what happened. It happened so many times that to this day, my mother still gets the creeps when I mention it. Looking back, I feel as though I might not have been as alone as I thought after the shadow disappeared. Perhaps the sinister feeling had not been emptiness, but another entity filling the space. A second, darker shadow, whatever it might have been. I'm glad that I had the sense to run outside to my mother when the first shadow disappeared. That was not the end of the strangeness. In the years since, my parents have told me about other things which happened in the house. Things I don't recall, as I was too young to remember or note their significance. For example, how our surround sound speakers would turn on by themselves, with soft whispering voices, saying things just on the verge of being understandable. Sometimes this would happen, even when the speakers were switched off and unplugged. My parents made complaints to the manufacturers, and had people come in to see if perhaps they were picking up aeroplane signals or whatnot, but no explanation was ever found nor given. On another occasion, my mother and godmother were looking out the living room window at the mansion across the street, when they saw what was described as a silhouette of a grey lady in one of the windows. Later, I found out that the house that we lived in was built on top of a burial site for the indigenous Australians who were forced to work on the land. These people had been denied both burial rights of their own people and culture and those of the church. As such, it was unholy ground. The gravesite's inhabitants forever lost, seeking the final rest which was denied to them. My roommate V was always at her boyfriend's place. So I was living essentially alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, and my friend Esme was crashing with me whilst looking for her own place. She found a place nearby, renting a master bedroom with an attached bathroom, female only, for way cheap. We checked out the Google Street View on my laptop, and it looked like a cute little beach house. She rode her bike over to check it out alone, as the house was right by the beach, and tons of people would be about, so she thought nothing of it. She said it was 2 beach-type white guys, a young, disheveled stoner guy, and a middle-aged parrot-head guy, that would close talk, whilst giving her obvious elevator eyes the whole time. She's pretty, petite, Mexican, and about 21, but looks younger, and the older guy kept saying that she was just what they were looking for, kinda slowly, in what she described as an uber creepy voice. The younger guy just stared and followed them around. She thought it was odd that they slept in the tiny guest bedroom and were renting out the master bedroom, but decided that she would look at it anyway. She said it was a really nice room, with a big heavy wooden 4-poster bed in the middle, and it looked like it belonged in a castle. And the bathroom had a huge shower, with multiple shower heads on the walls, like it was built for a bunch of people to shower at once. She didn't like being in the back bedroom, with the 2 guys looming over her, and she said it was really stuffy, and she wanted to make sure her unlocked bike in the front yard was okay. She all but ran to the front yard, and once she was outside with bystanders, she felt much better. So she's standing in the front yard with the older guy, and he's explaining that she could move in right away, but the bed has to stay exactly where it is, and that it comes with the room and is bolted to the floor and cannot be moved. They have special sheets for it and everything, so she can bring all her stuff, but can never move the bed. Also, she can have friends over, but only if they're also young women, no men, and they can sleep over but also need to sleep in the bed. The hardwood floor was just too uncomfortable. The couches in the living room are suede, so no one can sleep on them. All these reasons why a big pile of girls need to sleep on the bed. So she's sufficiently creeped out by this guy and texts me to come over. I ride my bike over, and as I'm pulling up she's leaving. We start to ride a little away, and he yells out after us. It's mandatory, but we always have a blast. She kind of shudders, and I ask her what's up. She says she'll tell me over drinks, so we ride to the nearest little beach bar. She explains about the room, the bed, the guys, and then tells me the part of the deal that is mandatory: skiing trip to Lake Tahoe in Northern California each year. She can invite girls on the trip that have been to the house before if they think they're cool enough. It's free for her and her girlfriends, but mandatory that she goes with the guys as their official woman. There would be other men there, but they all brought their own woman. He said it's like the woman would be assigned to them or something. So our minds start racing as we convince ourselves that the bedroom and trip are some elaborate web of cam/BDSM situation or something. Needless to say, she never moved in there or took them up on their free ski weekend offer. V ended up moving in with her boyfriend, and Esme and I moved in together for a couple of years. She was an awesome roommate. My grandfather died last year, sometime when my son was maybe a year old. We had dinner with the whole family every Friday, so my son had seen him several times. My grandfather was very quiet and a proud man, but when he thought he was alone or unseen, he would make silly faces at my son to get a laugh. A couple of nights after his funeral, my son, who likes to crawl into bed with us in the middle of the night, started laughing uncontrollably at 2 a.m. So I get out of the bed to go see what's going on, and find my son sitting in the middle of the living room, in the dark, laughing. Remember, it's 2 a.m. So I say, "Hey buddy, what are you doing?" He just replies, "Papa funny." I got a little nervous for some reason and went to pick him up and bring him up to our room for the rest of the night. And as I'm hauling him away, he says, "Bye, Papa," and blows a kiss at absolutely nothing I can see.
Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video. And if you didn't hear yesterday, I have just launched my merch store. So if you'd like some Mortis Media themed apparel, feel free to check it out. You can find a link to it in the description. And of course, if you enjoyed today's video, please consider dropping a like and leaving a comment, as it's a really great way to help support the channel, and I really appreciate it. And if you would like to do something incredible to help support the channel further, feel free to visit my Patreon page, which you can also find in the description, as well as the links to my social media. And if you would like your story read on my channel, you can submit it as a text post to Reddit, or send it to me via email. Both links can of course be found in the description. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.